all of a sudden you're still sitting there conferencing with God who just came through your ceiling. And apparently we're going to need to do repairs on your model home after this, Ty. But and he says to you, okay, Ty, I know, okay, Brady, I know I told you I'd give you everything on that list, but I changed my mind, and you only get three things on that list. You have 30 seconds to pick which three things you want. Go. Just circle them or whatever you want to do. Put a check next to them, star next to them, whatever. You only get three. You have 15 seconds left. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop. Did you select the three things? One of them on my list that I made, let me think about this. This would have been in 2002, 23 years ago. One of the things on my list was to own a home in Denali National Park and to be able in Alaska and to be able to go there for half of the year. I wrote that down 23 years ago. I bought that house 2 years ago. So I'm just trying to show you the power of this process. I also wrote down on that list a cabin in the mountains. A cabin in the mountains that I wanted to own. These are some of my cabins in the mountains. You know, I'm just showing you so you know, like, this is what I did back in 2002. There's a couple of them here, you know. What I then did after I put these things down on this list is I went to the local Barnes and Noble. Actually, back then it was Borders Books, which is now out of business. I actually grew up with Chris Borders from Borders Books. But what I did is I went to a bookstore where they had a magazine section, and I went to the magazines and I pulled out, I looked for, you know how magazines are, they're always like based on an interest of yours. Like there'll be car magazines, there's hot rod magazines, there's the Rob Report, there's, like American Muscle, there's like foreign car magazines, I went and looked for log cabin magazines. I looked for all these different things. And I, at the time, couldn't afford to buy the magazines to get the pictures. So I took pictures on my phone. And then I think I actually back then I bought a couple of the magazines in the next like 30 days. I went back and bought them. But basically, I took pictures of each of these things that I wanted and I put them on a board. I cut them out and put them on what I call a dream board. And then I put the dream board in my house. It was actually right near my master bathroom vanity where I could see it. And then eventually, Jordan knows this. Jordan, did I not have that dream board hanging in my office at Shaw Homes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had that dream board hanging in my office at Shaw Homes for the 17, 18 years I was at Shaw Homes. I had a bunch of those things hanging on my wall so that I could look at it every day and think about those things. Now, some of the things I put on my original dream board, there's a bunch of them that have come to pass. I mentioned a couple of them. I wanted to have a 1967 Shelby AC Cobra. I bought one of those, drove it for a while, owned it for about 2 years, then I sold it. I wanted to have ATVs, wanted to have um, an RV. Kind of, these were all different things over the years that I added to the list. There were some things I added to the list One of them was an airplane. I took it off the list when Steve got one. Because you know what's better than owning an airplane?
Using somebody else's.
Having a friend who owns an airplane.
Same thing
But
as a boat.
I went through this process of like putting all these things on there and actually like going, okay, if I was gonna have a cabin, what do I want it to look like? Where would I want it to be? And I actually spent time looking for properties and looking up through realtor.com and different things, properties that I might want to buy, even though I didn't have the money to buy them at the time. So I started like trying to think bigger and stretch my thinking to beyond where I was. Because otherwise, if I stay where I am, I stay where I am. I know that's really profound, but if I stay where I am, I stay where I am. If I want to get bigger, stretch bigger, I got to grow, I got to learn, I got to have dreams that help stretch me, right? One of the most important parts of doing this dream is like you got to go touch it. So I went out and test drove like every car that I could possibly want. I test drove them all and I like started picking out like what color do I want, what color interior, what features do I want, right? What year do I want? And looking at all that stuff so that I could solidify my dream and make it more real to me. And when you go touch it, you go experience it, you go look at it, whether it's through pictures. I mean, now there's Google Images, like you can print a picture of whatever you want from Google, right? But back then, I looked in magazines and books and I would physically go shop for things that I 100% could not afford so that I would stretch my mind and make my brain not figure out the how to, but figure out the reason why. Because when you figure out the reason why, your brain starts to figure out how to. And so then the other really powerful thing that you have to do in doing this is you need to tell someone else about it. Somebody who cares in your life. So I took my wife dream building with me. And if you want to have somebody who will hold you accountable to go after those things, then take your wife and let her dream with you. My wife definitely pushed me to go do those things once I started dreaming with her. She's like, "You're not going to dream about these things and then not go do it, are you?" And I think that that's an important piece of the puzzle, right? And then I had a friend who was a mentor in my life. His name was Jim Goldberg. And I told you about him, right? Did I tell you about the rubber band guy?
Mm-mm.
You guys remember this? Okay, Jim Goldberg, this is a true story, you guys. Jim Goldberg was, when I was growing up, one of my friends that I went to grade school with, he was her family's babysitter. Okay. So when I was a kid, like I would go over to their house, they lived down the street from me, and Jim was babysitting, like back in the day. And then years later, I'm in my mid 20s, and I met Jim at a business event and found out. So Jim had become the band manager for Alice Cooper. You know who Alice Cooper is? Yeah. So Jim, pot smoking Jim, who Jim literally, this is Jim. He would be wearing a t-shirt and it would have like burn holes in the t-shirt from smoking so much weed that like the seeds would pop out of his like weed and like burn his shirt. He was like the biggest weed smoker you ever met in your life. Well, then a couple years later, all of a sudden I see Jim at this business event and find out Jim is an extremely successful multi millionaire, Not from being Alice Cooper's band manager. He didn't make very much money at that. He got a lot of weed from that, but not a lot of business acumen from that. Um, but he became really successful, and he had created a passive income in his life that was really like second to none of all the people I knew. He was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in passive income. You guys know what I mean when I say passive?
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and he had been retired from the time he was like 40. So, very successful guy. And Jim always had this rubber band around his wrist. And the first time I met him, he pulled it back really far and snapped himself. And he was like, ow. And I was like, what is this dude doing? Like, what was that? About 20 minutes later, he pulls it back again and snaps himself. He's like, ow. I was like, that guy's weird. And I left that meeting thinking, that guy's weird. A couple weeks later, I see him again, and he's still snapping himself with the rubber band. So I walked up to him. I'm like, I got to ask this guy about this rubber band. I said, Jim, uh, what's with the rubber band? And he goes, oh, I did that a long time ago. I always wear one of those. He's like, I got a big bag at home. If one breaks, I get another one, put it on. I was like, why? And he's like, well, I realized that the goals that I wanted to reach in my life were very big, and that if I was going to reach those goals, I was really going to have to stretch myself, and it was going to be painful. And so I wear that rubber band and I snap myself every time I think of it to remind myself I need to stretch myself and that it's going to be painful, but that eventually it'll be worth it. And I was
Wow.
like, I love that. I was like, that is great. I'm not going to do that, but I love the concept.
Wow.
And so Jim really stretched himself because he came from like a weed smoking hippie, to a really successful business guy. And then the other thing that Jim Goldberg told me is he said, Aaron, when I first started like dreaming about what I wanted to do with my life, he said, I I was thinking about things that really meant a lot to me. And he said, greed only got me so far. He said, when I got to the limit of greed, I had to get a dream that was going to impact somebody beyond me. And he said, that's what really propelled me to where I eventually got to, was I had to have a dream that was bigger than just me. It was like, who could I impact? Who could I be a big influence towards? And so he said, finding a mission outside of myself was what took me from success to ultra success. And so, it was like, who can I help became kind of his, reason that took him from his reason why for himself to his reason why for somebody else. So that was Jim Goldberg. He was a great guy. He died a few years ago, but he was a
Does he
great
have
friend.
does he have kids by chance that are still in the music business?
Nope, nope. His kids are not in the music business. They're in his business. So,
I was gonna say I have a buddy that's named Jordan Goldberg, and he is the his dad actually is the talent director for American Idol.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we met actually through a rock concert, and he was helping manage uh Stephen Piercy, a Rat.
Okay, gotcha.
So when you
Yeah,
mention Alice Cooper, I always think of the Wayne's World when they're sitting
yeah.
in there talking about Native Americans.
Right. That's funny. But anyways, I think that this isn't like a sales tactic. I'm not teaching sales today or the process today, but I think it's really good. I would, on your dream board, I would write down a number of sales. If you want to reverse engineer it from income to number of contracts, that's fine. However you want to do it. If you'd rather write an income number. And then I would spend some time, I'd spend some hours dream building on like what are the things that I would like to have come to pass in my life, here in the next 1 year, 2 years, and ultimately over the course of my life. And then putting those things together on a dream board, get yourself like a 24 by 36 piece of cardboard and start putting it on there, or poster board, or whatever you want to do, or just start posting pictures, cutting out pictures and putting them on your mirror, or whatever works for you. But getting something that is tangible that you can see on a daily basis. Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah, it completely changed for me when I stopped thinking about the income side of it because that's all I used to think about. I was like, I don't make enough money. I don't make enough money. And I was like, okay, you're focusing on the wrong thing. I felt like whenever I was focusing on the money, I was desperate. All right, maybe sounded desperate, or I was over communicating because I was desperate. And then I was like, okay, I just need to focus on how many do I need to do, and then stop thinking about the money. The money will come with it.
There's a saying that um, if I can help enough people to meet their goals, then I will achieve mine. You ever heard that?
Yep. That's solid. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like sometimes it's like, hey, what can I do to help? You know, so for you guys, it'd be like, if I can help my builder make their goal, I can make mine. You know, if I can help my wife make our goal, I can make mine. You know, if I can help my customer make their goal of finding their home, I can achieve mine. So it's you got to be careful not to internalize too much, because it's really about helping other people. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes out of selling a home, because you're really helping people in a very pivotal moment in their life, usually, where they're trying to make an emotional move because my kids just moved out and I'm an empty nester. I want to be closer to my kids, or whatever. I'm just had a spouse pass away and now I'm moving into my home that's my last home, or I just got a new job, or my business is doing well and now I can get a new home, or whatever the thing might be. Those are the things that are the motivators, you know, for them. And so you get to be involved in a pivotal moment in their life, which is pretty cool. All right. Speaking of pivotal moments, I have back-to-back many appointments for the rest of the day, and I need to eat some food before I go into those. So I'm going to jump off of here for today, because one of my goals is to get fatter today. Um, I'm just kidding. But hopefully this helped you guys. I believe in you. I like your dreams. I think you guys should get bigger ones. They're never big enough, right? If they're all about you, they're never big enough, anyways. So find some dreams to help some other people. All right. Appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Yes, sir. God bless you, man.
All right. See you, man.